This program is brought to you by FanDuel, where we give sports fans the chance to win every day.
The Pelicans lose again. We're not going to keep y'all here long.
First took away. Gas for this. Get your money's worth now.
Welcome to another episode of Propels Talk. I'm your host, Chris Connor here. Got my dog, my OG here, David Grubb here, joining us late. Surrounded by darkness, and so are the Pelicans. Tonight was a night, we got to see one of the most I guess the best part of tonight are the jerseys. I'm a big fan of the jerseys, but shout out to all the good people that support us here. Sunshine, we got Taz, we have FanDuel, we have Scott Bickner as always, we have John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer, and nothing loses like a Pelican. Grubb, how you doing, brother?
At all. I'm doing well, man. I'm doing better than Pelicans. Now I took a little road trip today up the Michigan coast, down to Michigan City, and got myself this pizza, bro. It's this pizza that I've been thinking about for 9 years. And I saw they closed for the season tomorrow. And people folks in the South, nothing closes for the season. But in the North, because it gets cold, things close. And so, I had to go down there, took a 2-hour drive down there to get this pizza. And it was worth it, man. It was worth it. That was a highlight of my day.
Are the Pelicans closed for the season?
Winning part of this, like the competitive part, and it's sad because we've done this 2 years in a row where we knew the focus of the season had to change that quickly. And you're not thinking about the playoffs anymore. There's no way anybody in that building could talk about the playoffs. So what are you talking about now? And I think that's the question that we have to deal with for the rest of this season, because we're not going to sit here at every game talk about, is this the thing that turns it around? Because they're not going to win 10 games in a row at any point. They're not going to get back into this legitimately. They could find themselves falling into, a race for 10 at some point just because teams start backing out down the stretch. But, goals and objectives, whatever Joe Dumars had set up for this season, that's over. Whatever their dreams were, that's over. So what can you salvage? That's the question at this point.
So I took a look here, Grubb, and you were actually generous. I asked you before the show. I said, Grubb, how many games have the Pelicans lost in a row? And you told me 8. They've lost 9. 9. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. You're not losing the games. They losing the games. It's 9. Man. Chat, appreciate y'all, man, for pulling up as always, man. Like, comment, subscribe, man. I don't want to be here long, but let's talk about this game here, man. So, Pelicans lose 115-98. Jalen Johnson with almost another triple double here tonight, 18, 11, and 9. Porzingis dominated the game. Some things to talk about there. Dyson Daniels kind of night, 14 and 8 when he's right. And for the Pelicans, Derek Queen didn't really shoot the greatest from the field here, but finishes with 20 and 9. Jeremiah Fears, limited impact. Trey Murphy, 6 for 16. Sadiq Bey had an okay game. Micah Peavy started and replaced for Herb Jones. No Zion tonight. And it's really nothing else to talk about. Grubb, the Pelicans got off to a solid start. You could also say that Atlanta got off to a slow start offensively, and once they started to pick things up, make some of their shots in the second quarter, the game kind of started to swing their way. But one of the things I want to talk with you about, walk me through your perspective of the Pelicans' decision to have Peavy for periods of time guard Porzingis than it was others. Like they put smaller guys on Porzingis, and he just shot over them and overpowered them pretty much the entire night. What are your thoughts on their matchup decisions in this game?
This is a game where you thought maybe Carlo would be a little bit more useful. If he had been available. Because I think Carlo matched up better with Porzingis, a guy who's comfortable being on the perimeter, who gives you some length as well, and could challenge Porzingis around the rim. you don't really have anybody to do that. Queen is too inexperienced and would have gotten into a lot of foul trouble, I think, guarding Porzingis out on the perimeter. And then you don't really, that's not Misi's strong point. That's not Looney's strong point to deal with him out there. So, yeah, I think it's just they were in a bad position defensively. But I don't like, the thing, I think we've talked about this before, is I don't like the Pelicans' propensity to try to switch everything and to have these guys put in positions where they don't guard somebody face up time and time again. And I think against a guy like Porzingis, and the Hawks are not stupid. And Quinn Snyder, I think we would both agree, is one of the most intelligent coaches when it comes to attacking matchups. And so if you're giving him that, the Hawks just went to it and they just kept exploiting that over and over again. And there just was nothing that the Pelicans could really legitimately do to counter it. And that's the problem, is the Pelicans don't have many responses game to game. We talk about it's a game of adjustments. What adjustments can they make? Like, there aren't many adjustments for them to make outside of, try a little hard.
Yeah. I mean, when your options off the bench tonight were Kevon Looney, Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins, Bryce McGowan, and Yves Missy. Just simply, with the amount of player that you saw, you saw it on the floor. Just not a lot of creation available. Not enough options that can go and get you points. And then on the other side of the floor, the Pelicans tried to go zone at different parts of the game, but they knew that they couldn't match up with what Atlanta was throwing out there. So your only hope is to give some effort, hope they miss some shots and get in transition. And ultimately it just didn't work. Another night where the Pelicans shoot poorly from three. I think they finished at 30%. You just outmatched on the second night of a back-to-back. Atlanta also didn't turn the ball over tonight. I think they finished with like 7 turnovers. So kind of is what it is. I'm curious, while it's on my mind, Grub, I saw a video here of I didn't see the last few minutes of the game. Derek Queen went, I don't know if it was a steal or he went coast to coast with like 2 seconds left on the clock, 3 seconds left on the clock to cut the lead to 17. Game's over. What are your thoughts on shit like that? Like does that matter to you? Is it immature? Is it how you feel about it?
It's immature if you're the winning team. That's usually where we do these things. If the winning team, if you got the ball late, you don't go drive and take another shot. If you're the Hawks, giving up another bucket shouldn't matter. I thought it was a little odd. You know what I mean? Like, it's a rookie doing what rookies do. Is it technically, like, I don't like unwritten rules. I think they're stupid. I think, like, hey, play till the game's over. But I think if you're winning, 19, you have 19, then you don't do something like that. But I thought Derek was just, playing. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a rookie. That's what rookies do. But I thought it was a silly kind of confrontation at the end for both teams. It didn't make the Pelicans look any tougher. It certainly didn't make the Hawks look any tougher. I thought it was just a waste of time.
Grub, what do you take from games like this where, like, Candid, this is a good comment. Like, you had over $120 million and Carlos sitting on the bench, we smoked from the jump. What do you've already fired your coach. Like, what do you take from him?
But see, I think we got to stop just doing that, because it lets them off the hook when we say that there's $120 million on the bench, because there are plenty of teams that got a lot of money on the bench. You know what I'm saying? There's plenty. The Celtics got a lot of, not only do they have a lot of money on the bench, they're paying people to take their players other places. Utah's got not a lot of talent. They're winning more games. You know what I'm saying? There are teams that are missing players. How much are the Mavericks missing? When you played them last night.
Yep.
Everybody's
missing. Pistons were missing a lot of guys for a long stretch of their winning streak.
And they're winning games. We saw it with the Grizzlies a couple years ago, right? They were missing plenty of people, kept winning games. So the Hawks tonight, they're missing their guy, their all-star. Again, so at the point of attack, you're still doing the same things. So it doesn't matter who's on the floor if the failures are all the same. The failures are all the same. You're still getting beat doing the same stuff. How many times did Dyson Daniels, where his drive is the only thing that's consistent for him, how many times did he just drive straight to the rim and get a layup? How many times did Reece Archie, though he's missing all of his shots, how many times are they getting second chance opportunities? How many times are teams doing the same stuff, getting points off of turnovers, and you can't score points off of the turnovers you do generate? How many times are you going to have a night where you scored? This was the 6th time this season they had less than 10 threes. It's the fourth time this season that they had, I mean, it's just like they've done under 100 points. You're not getting assists. All those things are about how the team plays. And we've talked about this for years now. Other teams, their identity exists no matter who's on the floor. If they're going to lose, they're going to lose playing the same way every night. When you lost to the Warriors, they had 17 combined points from Draymond Green and Steph Curry, and you still lose. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing if you don't do it well. And the Pelicans don't do anything consistently well on a night-to-night basis. Show me the one thing that you could hang your hat on and say, let's build from this.
Well, one of the things we can hang our hat on is that post-game win or loss, y'all gonna be in here, man. 218 people in here, man, live. We really appreciate y'all, man. Please, I'm gonna do my best. Ain't no, like, it's a skeleton crew working tonight. Lala here, but I don't know if she working for real or not. I don't mean that disrespect. I'm just saying I don't know if she's starring comments. She just here because I told her I was gonna do the show. So, and then Grub just so happened to be like, yeah, like, let's pause. So, I'm gonna try to start these comments where I can, but I mean, I can't rap and be the DJ. It just, I can only do so much. Grub, I'm looking at the schedule here, man, upcoming, and I think, when you looked at once you left the homestand and you envision getting Zion back, at some point, and cool, Jordan Poole should be back next week more than likely, hopefully, if all goes well. But after the homestand, you looked at these last two games, Dallas and Hawks, at Atlanta, games that minimum you could win one of them. They leave with none. Monday, they're still in the city. They play Chicago. They play Memphis on Wednesday. And then they got to go to they go to the West Coast to play Golden State in LA. I mean, girl, whether Poole comes back or not, where does this team find another win upcoming? Hey, La, there you go. Thanks, La.
Maybe Brooklyn on December 6th.
Jesus Christ.
That's the next one. Because, I mean, you got back-to-back with Minnesota at home. You ain't going to beat Minnesota. You ain't going to beat the Lakers on the road. You're not going to beat Golden State on the road. Maybe Memphis. But, again, all of these teams, the things that you look at, Chicago with Giddey and Vucevic. With Memphis, you talk about Ja if he's playing and Triple J. Golden State, you know what they do. The Lakers, you know what Luka's going to do. Minnesota, like, there's a guy that they're not going to be able to stop on every one of these teams. And those teams all do things that the Pelicans don't. Well, Pelicans don't do anything well. But you look at this and you say, how are you going to generate enough points? Let's take the defense off for real, right? Let's just take the defense off the table. They ain't never going to play good defense this season. But you're scoring 100 now probably after tonight 106 points per game. 106, you're the lowest scoring team in the NBA. And we talked about this. You had to be elite offensively to be able to compete this season. And they're not anywhere close to that. And they cannot generate tempo. They don't have enough. And I feel bad for the young players, because I think that, again, they've been put in an unenviable position. If you're Jeremiah Fears, it's becoming clear that Jeremiah Fears, we talked about that, him not being a traditional point guard. And that's just not who he is. And if you don't have somebody else on the floor that can pass the basketball, he's getting 3 assists a night if you're lucky. So if you don't have people who can move the basketball, and we've seen only spurts of it, you saw how thirsty everybody got because the ball moved a little bit last game. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody gets real thirsty about that. But that's not who this team is. Again, it'd be back to 21 assists again. You're back to not scoring for long stretches of the game. You're back to not taking threes. This is who they are. You think Borrego is telling them not to shoot threes? You think he's telling them to shoot 25, 28 threes? This is who they are. They can't help it. And that's the problem, is this is a poorly built team. And I said it when they fired Willie Green. They can get better, but they ain't going to be good.
Hopper, yes. La real, man. Best in the business too, man. Yeah, she definitely real.
She real, and she a real one.
Real one. She tall too. Tall. Shout out to La. Candid here. That's what I'm saying. They don't have enough. They don't have enough. Nah, that's real. I mean, so I mean, Grub, even with everything that you mentioned about just who they are, um, how much can getting back, getting back Zion, getting back Poole. I mean, even if if we're talking about it at a below average level, how much can that help this team, help this group? Are there any changes that you would make to the starting lineup? Herb was out as well tonight, but he's been he's had his struggles in certain areas. What is there a certain identity that this team can lean into that can help them sustain or play even average to above average basketball for a stretch at some point if they're healthy?
I mean, I think you could win some games. Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be a point in the season where you put it together and win a couple games. But um, I think the problem here is, again, what are your goals, right? Because if your goals are to win a few games during the season just to win some games, okay, you can do that. They certainly have enough of a bare minimum, baseline of talent to win some games. They
Mhm.
are not as bad as they have played, but they're certainly not a good team. But
Mhm.
what does that solve? Like
Yeah.
now you are on to the long term part of this again. Because when you know that you're not in the, and I know there are folks who are saying they could turn it around and get the playoff. Okay, even if you do, you're not winning a series. Like even if you found a way to get in as the 8, you're not winning a series against Oklahoma City in the first round. It's just not happening. So
Mhm.
what did you do with this year then? And I think that the question that has been answered to me is it doesn't matter who you put in the starting lineup. The things is that Queen has to play. The Fears has to play, and everything else to me is up for grabs because how long now? And I'm one of the people that said give Zion one more chance, but it's over. You know what I'm saying? Like that part is over. You can't go into year 8 hoping that he's going to be healthy now. You did everything you could, and you still didn't set it up. And I think the only thing that you can do is start really looking at the future. You got to start, breaking this down because I think if for Borrego, he has a much better chance of implementing this stuff with just the young guys and letting them screw up than he does trying to get the young guys and the older guys to figure it out together because the motivations are different now. When your career is just starting out, you're trying to establish yourself as an NBA player. Trey's not trying to establish himself anymore. Herb's not trying to establish himself anymore. Their goals are different now. They're trying to play for contract number 3. And so if you're on that contract number 3, you got to start winning something. And I think that the timeline now is again put in a place where if you're focusing on the young guys and you want them to develop and get to a position to win, then you got to give those guys the opportunity to fail right now.
Yeah. And how do you fail right now properly with some of the veterans that you spoke about that are on the team right now? That look, I mean, even if we're looking ahead here, but even if it's a situation where they end up selling at some point, even marginally, if it's a Herb Jones, um, I don't know if you can envision at the deadline them making any large moves in reference to moving off talent. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean, you're looking a team square in the eye that has your pick next year tonight. You looked at Atlanta. Atlanta has your destiny for next year. Um, so what do you do in a situation like this where, yeah, you have some young talent, you have some guy, you have some building blocks, I think, going forward, but you do have some young veterans or some guys that are getting a little bit maybe beyond that have questions that you have to kind of take care of. But if you tear it down, Grub, how much does that really help you considering you don't get rewarded for it next year? There's not another young talent, there's not another lottery pick that's coming, towards you. Like, how does this team in this situation that they've found themselves, let's put themselves in, address the rest of this season, loss after loss after loss, 2-15 their first 17 games in?
Uh, uh, I think, yeah, you can't sell too early because you need to see how things are starting to shake out. Because you're right, you got to see which teams are willing to allow you to get back into next year's draft. And we already know, like, not only like that Atlanta That Indiana pick, remember too, you gave Indiana their pick back and they got 2 wins, 1 win or 2 wins, whatever at this stage. So you're going to be watching 2 teams that could end up at the top 5 of the draft with your picks this season. And that's, again, it's no fault of Derek Queen's. I don't want to, say nothing that's his fault, but that's always going to be the thing. No matter what he does, he's going to be judged by what happens next year in the draft. And I think that you have the ability to start getting some of your picks back. You may have to take a longer term approach, but there's nothing worse in the NBA than being caught in the middle. And the Pelicans are part of the big middle. They're not part of the narrow middle. They're part of a very big middle of mediocre teams, even at their best. Like the best of this team was an 8th seed. So what are we really fighting to hold on to? And 8 years into it, 7 years into this experiment, and Joe Dumars it didn't restart with him because the players didn't restart with him. The coach didn't restart with him. So you're on that same window. And it's just, I think that you have the opportunity. If you can find out where this draft is starting to go and where the season is starting to go, move off of Trey would be my first target to move because he's going to get you the most.
Talk about that.
And I say that because I think, Trey and Queen play really well together. Absolutely. And I think the thing about Trey is he's a number 2 or a number 3. He's not the number 1. I think he could still be an all-star talent. Guys who are not number 1s have plenty of guys been all-stars. Chris Middleton wasn't a guy who had a very complex game but made all-star. Klay Thompson can do 2 things and he's been an all-star. Draymond Green. So I think Trey could be an all-star, but he's just not the guy who you build your team around. And I think Trey understands that. But everybody's been put in situations where they're not thriving. And I think if you can get assets, get multiple picks for Trey, he would be number 1. Because I think you have a guy like Herb who becomes like a Nick Collison type, Udonis Haslem type figure. If you're keeping culture, Herb can do that. He can bring Micah Peavy along, develop that kind of guy, and be a locker room presence. But Trey and Zion, to me, you got to see Zion give you enough minutes. But those 2 guys, along with Jose, and then I think also a Sadiq Bey at this stage too, because his contract is running out. He is an asset to somebody at the end of this season. And I think, and then you're also able to get off of Kevon Looney at the end of the year because you have a team option. You have the ability to remake this and start building for the future. You may have to take on some bad deals, like Oklahoma City did. Take a veteran here or there who has a 1-year expiring, who eats up some of your cap. But Jordan Poole could be again, he's only got 1 more year after this. And if it's not working here and it's not working for Jordan, there's somebody may need that 6th man to come off the bench this year and will be willing to take that. DeJounte Murray, you might have to take a bad contract back to get him off your roster. But if you can get a pick for DeJounte Murray, then try to swing these deals. I think the path to relevancy is not dark. It's just you have to commit to it. And that's the problem with the Pelicans, is that they have never committed to a single path. They tried to walk down 2 paths at the same time.
And you know what, Grub? It's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking about that immediately after, as you went into your subject. I mean, and I'm thinking in the history, like since the team has moved to New Orleans, like I don't think they've embraced rebuilding once. I think the closest you got to it, for real, was when they had Chris Paul, and even towards, I think Peja had got to New Orleans. Was it year 2 of Chris Paul? May have been 3. Now, that may be fair. Year 3 for Queen, and Fears for you adding a big fish if you can get one. But that's the Chris Paul years are the closest I can think. I mean, even then. A year after, what was it? After J.R. Smith's rookie year, he's traded. You bring in Tyson Chandler. Like, it feels as if, you go to Anthony Davis. They gave that 1 year. Next year, Tyreek Evans and Drew Holiday are Pelicans, right? I mean, Zion, same thing. Drew Holiday stays. You keep Gentry. You bring in JJ Redick and Derek Favors. So, now I think about it, this franchise, period, Nope. Different GMs, different ownerships. They've never fully embraced a full rebuild, a full breakdown. And what makes it so interesting, Grub, is that I think it complicates what people are watching for some folks because they've never seen what it actually looks like. They've seen rush rebuilds. They've seen botched rebuilds. They've seen missed draft picks and traded draft picks and this, but you've never seen, since this team has been here, you haven't seen 2 lottery picks be built around and everything else been scrapped down around them. It hasn't happened.
I mean, there are people who got on me because I said it's the OKC model. And they said, well, you're not going to get 5 picks for anybody on this team. And I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about. It's just that Oklahoma City, what they did was commit to their path. Once they identified their guy in Shea, everything they did was to build around Shea. Every player they got was a compliment to Shea. And it's not like, again, Oklahoma City wasn't drafted in the top 5 every year. The only top 5 pick they got in that group was Chet. The rest of them were middle first round picks primarily. And what they made were good picks. They stuck to the mission and they didn't lose very long. Same with Memphis, right? Memphis did the same thing. They were the same position as Pelicans, number 2 pick that year with Ja, and then grabbing the rest of those people after him, building the team with Bane and with Triple J, and then adding pieces around it. The Pelicans, as we said, you have tried to do it both ways. You've tried to either not build properly around Zion. If you were going to take Zion, you should have either had all veterans around him and let him then go for wins immediately, or you should have been all young and let them grow up together. They didn't want to do that. And like you said, it's a New Orleans thing. The best teams in New Orleans football history, the 87 Saints that won their first wild card, got to the wild card and everything, that was a complete rebuild. The only guy who was the holdover was Ricky Jackson. Everybody else was built up by Jim Mora and brought in with Jim Mora. And then the same with the Sean Payton. The only guy who was around that first year really who was that you that remember from as a holdover was Joe Horn. Everybody else was Sean Payton's people pretty much. Drew Brees, Reggie Bush, all of them that's Sean Payton's people that made the difference. So, you have to embrace that sometimes to just get that out of the way. And the teams that shortcut it, like Brooklyn tried to do, like these other teams, that's why you get stuck, because you try to make the shortcut. But it seems that the teams that really, Portland now, doing it the right way, right? Portland figuring out they're getting back at Minnesota, did it the right way, didn't shortcut it until they saw they had a chance to win. Then they went out and got Gobert and all that. So I think the Pelicans can do this, but you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. And they've I think that's the ownership in all these cases. Because when you go back to what the New Orleans Hornets were, when George Shinn got here, I think that people need to understand how this works historically. George Shinn comes in. He didn't want to be in New Orleans. He was running from Charlotte. He gets here, and the first thought is not about winning. His first thought is about who can he sell a piece of the team to. So when the commitment is not to basketball, the commitment was to get his money back. That was what it was all about. And that's why the Chris Paul era never lasted, because he wasn't going to spend that money. It broke up because they didn't have good ownership. You end up with Anthony Davis doing these things and bringing him in, and the ownership still will not commit. The reason the Pelicans have never paid the tax, the reason the Pelicans have never gone into this, have never splurged on a major free agent, is because they are in the business of making you think they want to win basketball games. They have never committed to actually winning basketball games. They do the cycle of hope. Every 4 to 5 years, it restarts. You think that you're there, then you lose, and then they start it all over. You get another new player. Let's start the cycle all over again. And you're at the end of this Zion Williamson cycle now, because it's been 4 years since that. This will be 3 years past the 49, but 4 years past Zion's peak in the 42-40 season when he was, arguably the best, one of the 5 best players in the league before he got hurt. So, I mean, this is the end of that cycle, and it's time for the Pelicans to decide, and that goes from ownership. It's ultimately going to be Gale's decision, and I think from what we listened to in those press conferences the last couple of weeks with Joe and Gale, it doesn't feel like they know that they're really committed to doing that.
No, it feels as if the common situation or situation that they found themselves in is, like you mentioned, stuck in the middle. We want to do two things at once. We don't want to. We want to bring in veteran talent and develop a bunch of young players. I think what's interesting, girl, I think people that you try to attract to your organization, they can see that as well. Coaches can see that. Players can see that. If you're bringing out a bunch of instability, it's hard to attract and it's hard to sustain with the people that you have. Yeah, you might get lucky, where you have a good year or you have a couple of years, but when you're talking about building something, like, it takes some ugliness. It takes some real. You need these kind of years and moments, and you might need two. In some sense, for you to really figure out where this is going to go. Feels a lot better when you have the right building blocks. And the thing is, Grub, it feels like with Jeremiah Fears and with Derek Queen, you have those building blocks. You have the young element building blocks. We don't know if these guys are going to be, superstars, no matter how high I am on Derek Queen, but it feels like with those two, you have a foundation that you can start building towards, building around. It's just, like you mentioned, it doesn't feel as if the organization finds himself in a situation the way they see that, because that means that you have to admit a lot of mistakes, and you have to move a lot of pieces in conjunction with each other. Like, you mentioned starting with Trey. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, you end up moving Trey, you got to move Zion, right? You move Zion, cool. If you ultimately keep Herb, you still have Jordan Poole, you still have DeJounte Murray. Like, you still have others that ultimately you are going to have to find homes for if this is going to be a complete stripped down rebuild, and this group can put together their own DNA, their own setup, bring in their players, their visions, like we've seen in previous regimes over time.
You got to pay the financial price, and at some point you got to clear the deck. And there's just too many overlapping contracts. And I think the big thing is the Pelicans have a bunch of contracts that are the mid-tier, and it's crazy that NBA $30 million is the mid-tier now. But that $30 million of guys who are not quite stars, but who are starter quality, and you've got a bunch of those. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have a bunch of those. And you can't win with a bunch of those guys. Show me a team that has 5 guys making $30 million or $25+ million, and that's what Pelicans got. And none of those guys outside of Zion, as far as talent, would you put as a number one. And then none of those guys in total have earned the ability for anybody to follow behind them. If you put DeJounte Murray on any other team in the league, is he a number one or a number two right now at $30 million? Even Jordan Poole, who people were high on, nobody is coming to take Jordan Poole from you, pause. But, nobody's fighting to get him off your roster. So you don't have folks. Thank you. I appreciate that, Chuck. You don't have a lot of folks who are beating down your door to steal your players. And that means you got to take some of the hit too financially. And I think, again, that's part of the commitment that's why I say with the Oklahoma City thing, when they take on a Gordon Hayward contract just to eat that and say, we got to get this other salary off of here, but we'll take your bad deal here. That's what the Pelicans are going to have to do. And if you've already gone through 2 years, this year and last year, of trying to be good and being a 20-win team. So let's just realize that you're bad and fix it, because you cannot keep renovating the house on top of a broken foundation. It's going to keep sliding off. You're going to keep having problems. You're going to do this. This is the Clippers from 1980 to whenever. Till the early 2000s. This is what this is, because Clippers didn't win any playoff games, series in, but every once in a while they get there. Whether it was the Ron Harper and Mark Jackson Clippers that got there, everybody's excited, or it's the knuckleheads and everybody got excited and they didn't do anything. And then the next year they were trash again. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the Pelicans are. And to get off of that, you have to have a plan, and you have to decide when it's time to fish and when it's time to cut bait. And you gave Zion all the chances. You gave him all the chances, and it just hasn't worked. And it ain't got to be animus at this point. It just hasn't worked. 7 years for anything. That's why in marriage they call it the 7-year itch. Hey, it's time to move on, and you've got, like you say, you've got 2 kids who are ahead of the curve. For a 19, 20 years old, they're both ahead of where we expected them to be. So build on that. Build on that, and don't put them in a position where you are like, yeah, the veterans are fine given knowledge now, but when you get to be 2 and 25, 5 and 31, if they're that, these kind of places, the veterans ain't gonna be out there dropping gems anymore. Like it's go home and get some sleep, kid, because we don't really care. We just playing this out.
And grow up is tough. I mean, we got 250 people in here, man. Please hit the like button. The last that I checked here, let me do another check here. I think we got about 71 likes here, but I might have to update. So I might be showing y'all. My bad if so. But I mean, back to an earlier point that I was making is just the history of this franchise when we talk about building around talents and what that looks like. When the Pelicans drafted Anthony Davis and Austin Rivers, it was like, okay, even if Austin didn't have the greatest year, and maybe you left the year one thinking that maybe Anthony Davis was closer to I remember the conversations being there around that time. AD might just be a really good Marcus Camby and I think Marcus had a pretty solid pick and pop game, but he just might be a really good Marcus Camby, which is cool, which was fine. So, Tom Benson ends up taking over ownership completely, and we're talking about him kind of pushing chips forward or raising the urgency and them trying to win. Now, whether or not that was the case, or the team built more about what they thought that said player needed, they put players in front of the guy that they had drafted. They put players in front of the guys that they had drafted. They put people in their way. So Tyreke Evans and Drew Holiday and Eric Gordon, well, Eric was already there, but Tyreke and Drew Holiday come in. They're stepping in the way of an Austin Rivers. They're in the way of an Anthony Davis, to where he's not getting the usage, and he performs through it all. He perseveres through it. Still, it's like, oh, damn, wait a minute. We weren't expecting this. Now you're stuck with these guys. And it's just a bunch of talent all getting in the way, but it's not Anthony Davis's team. Austin Rivers can't properly develop. Even if he was going to be the same guy that he was, he's limited because you brought in all these different people and from these veterans that are going to acquire and have earned more time, more minutes, more of the basketball than him. And I think this conversation that we're having, around veterans, you have to keep that, in mind when talking about this. It's like, my issue with Jeremiah Fears starting is not that he isn't going to be a really good talent. It's not that he's not going to be a really good player. It's not that he's not your future. It's that ultimately, if you want to starting him with Zion and Trey and Herb and or Poole and company, and having him do things that go against his development, or having him do things that don't mesh with his strengths, don't make sense to me. It just makes his life and his job harder. He's clearly right now, his strengths is with him having the basketball, and he's a score first guard. It's what he knows right now. That's who he is. It's no point of trying to make him into something that he's not right now. You need to be supporting what he does well, and that's getting downhill, that's getting in transition, that's creating for himself, and then pinches and doses he'll create for others. But you're not going to turn him into something that he's not. He's not going to be Chris Paul. That's just not. Does he develop into more of a passing, guard? Maybe. But right now, you have a clear understanding. This dude is averaging 15 points a game. That's who he is. Now, if you come in and you add next year, if you try to speed past this process and you add more things that don't go with that and put more guards in front of him and more players that also also have the ball, what does that leave him with? I struggle with believing that this franchise looks at this moment right now and they can look at it and say, this is what we need to do. And we need to fully build around these people. We need to put players that complement them versus take away from them.
I mean, like you said, it's difficult for me to understand if your intention is to win games, by starting Jeremiah Fears. And you see the wide variance in his play on a nightly basis. And that's not his fault. He's a rookie. And we have shown the data, we have talked about this, that teams that start 18 and 19-year-olds don't win games because of the things that Jeremiah doesn't do well. He is not going to distribute well. He is going to turn it over too much. He is not a good defender at this stage. All those things are consistent on a nightly basis, and he goes through large lulls where it seems like his points come in bunches. It's every night. He either has a really, really good quarter or a really good half, but it's not 4 quarters of points. Queen is like that sometimes too. For all that he does, the points will come in bunches sometimes, and it's like because the offense goes their way. But you see, it's not benefiting anybody this way, because when you look at Trey's numbers, his shot attempts are not. His threes are up, but his overall shot attempts aren't better than last year. You know what I'm saying? He's not raised that number because the offense isn't moving. The ball's not getting, they're scoring fewer points. He's taking fewer shots because they can't run the offense through these guys. You're trying with Derek Queen, and there are times when it works. But look again, you'll see 7 assists in 1 quarter, and he finishes the game with 10. Or you'll see 5 assists in 1 quarter, he finishes the game with 8. So it's coming in these bunches, which is how this works for rookies. Because when the teams adjust, the lineups are changing, and the vets come back in and they can minimize some of the things these kids can do. So it's like when the reason I had said you start Jose wasn't because you thought Jose was going to give you 20 points and 7 assists every night, but you're getting killed in the same positions on a night-to-night basis. Point guards dominating you. And again, tonight, Dyson playing in that role was able to have a really good game for him. And centers are dominating you. Porzingis had a really good game. You see it on a night tonight. It has not mattered who it's been. Those 2 positions, and that's where you're playing your rookies and young players the most, are at those 2 spots. And you cannot win in this league if you can't stop the ball at the point of attack and your center can't keep the opposing center off the glass and getting second chance points. And those guys just can't do that right now. So, yeah, you're not putting them in a position to succeed. And that's fine, too, if you weren't trying to win. Mm-hmm. If you ain't trying to win, but you can't appease the vets who want to win. And you can't develop the rookies who know they're going to lose. And so I just think that, if you're going to play these guys, no, I don't think a healthy Murray, Poole, and Zion help Fears and Queen develop.
I was just about to say that.
Because Poole needs shots. Mm-hmm. Murray needs shots. Zion needs shots. And these kids need shots. That's the whole thing. And there aren't enough shots to go around. And it's not enough for them to, the offense is not going to get, Borrego's got to start all over again. You got to think about that. He's got to start all over again when Poole gets back. And then he's got to start all over again when DeJounte gets back. It's not going to make them better this year. It's not going to make it better. And it's just because you're on 2 different paths.
I'm like, yep. And see, and here's the thing, bro. This is part of my feelings on what now, Mr. Strong. I don't know if you are, if you've been watching this team since they got to New Orleans, or you just more so, or you paid attention to some of the other developments around the league necessarily. But if you say Murray, Poole, and Zion will help guys like Fears and Queen, you're just looking at it. To me, you're looking at it just from a talent perspective. Because if we use an example, and I'm a big history guy. When Grubb brought up SGA earlier, the one thing they did was they brought in Chris Paul, right? For SGA's first year, right? His first year in Oklahoma City.
They weren't even supposed to make the playoffs. They were supposed to be trash.
Right. That's to help his development, steer it along. They end up making the playoffs. Great. Then guess what? The next year, Chris Paul's out of there. Now, they could have kept Chris Paul and said,
Lou Dort there too. Throw Lou Dort there too, and what Lou Dort learned from Chris Paul defensively.
Yep. Good point. So, but the next year, they could have said, you know what, we're gonna try to run this back. This worked for us. Like it was a great story. We're gonna run it back. No, they didn't. They bring in they end up getting Al Horford. Darius Baisley's in the starting lineup, Lou Dort. And outside of that, dog, off the bench, it's homegrown talents and spot role players. Mike Muscala's. You got Theo Maladon, Poku, who they drafted. Kirich Williams was on that team. I think he's still a Thunder, right?
It is. Yep.
Diallo, not Check Diallo, but I'm forgetting. Yeah. So you talking young talent, but role playing guy like nobody else on that team. George Hill was on that team. Nobody that's getting in the way of SGA to where he gets an opportunity to fully thrive around. This is me. This team belongs to me. Whether we succeed or we fail, this is all built around me. And these role players are going to complicate what I do well. Now, at that time, they didn't have a second option necessarily, but it didn't matter. You know, I mean, you go to the next year. The next year, SGA has, I think that's the year where that's Josh Giddey. That's but another guy they drafted. Another guy that they drafted. They continue to build to build around. We're bringing in homegrown talent that all know this is the guy that we're building around, and we're going to continue to add fringe parts, and veterans, guys, role players.
And like all those guys complement each other. Like, what did they say? The first thing they were going to do was be aggressive defensively. So every one of those guys had to be, you could be able to switch. Dort played 1 through 3 when he first came in. SGA was playing 1 through 3 when he first came in. Same with the Jalen's. They played everything except sometimes they did play center, but they moved all these guys around and they were like, okay, we're all going to play defense. We're all going to run all the time. That's what we do. And the ones that could shoot, y'all go shoot. Because they didn't make SGA into a shooter. They didn't tell him he had to shoot threes. Remember, he was shooting like 3 or 4 threes a game at that stage. So they said, we got our driver. This dude is going to take it to the bucket. Everybody else, can you spot up? Can you drive to the bucket? What do you do? And so, OKC did not. They knew when they got rid of guys. If you don't fit into what we're doing, and it wasn't even they were casting guys out. They were like, you just don't fit here. And we'll keep cycling out the bench. It's no different than what Milwaukee did with Giannis. Go look at what Milwaukee did with Giannis. From the first year, it was just him and Middleton together. Everybody else kept changing. When they figured out it wasn't Bledsoe, they got rid of Bledsoe, they got Drew. When it wasn't Drew, you fix the pieces, but your core is your core. And the Pelicans have not figured out their core and stuck with it. You can't do it. Somebody's saying, why can't we do that around? You can't build around Jordan. Jordan Poole is not SGA, man. Jordan, the peak of Jordan Poole is a 6th man of the year. And that's okay. But I think peak Jordan Poole is a 6th man of the year candidate. SGA is an MVP and it could be winning back-to-back this year. So I think it's just a different kind of player. But this is, I think absolutely, you have to decide what your player archetype is. And there's a big difference. I think these are the two things that fans have to remember. This is between talent acquisition and team building. Team building is not about how the high level of talent that you have. It's about how those guys fit. Same, with the Pistons. What did the Pistons decide? We're going to be the most physical team possible. Everybody here, we got the 2 guys up front, and Jalen and Stewart, and they knock everybody down. And everybody else on the perimeter, you better be a dude like that. Cade is a wrecking ball. Ivy plays physical basketball. Everybody on that team is committed to it. And what do you change? They changed the veterans. They went out and got the better veterans to match what they were trying to do. We need a shooter. Let's go grab this guy. We need this. You get 1-year contracts, maybe 2 for those kind of guys while you bring your core along and keep the money. But yes, absolutely, I agree with Lee there that the Pelicans have way too many redundant pieces. It is not a roster that complements each other. There is talent by itself. But when you put them all together, it's a car that don't drive.
And, along that process, Grub, Detroit, Chuck Nola is a great example because they won back-to-back years where they didn't win 20 games. So now part of that, Cade's hurt, right? So that kind of, messes you up for a period, but they didn't bring in any players that would get in the way of Cade. The biggest situation that they were going to have to figure out at some point, and unfortunately, it's been because of Ivy being hurt since Cade has come back, and Cade has been healthy and been the guy they've been winning, is that okay? How can Cade and Ivy thrive together? Unfortunately, they haven't really had to deal with that as much because Ivy's been hurt. But through that, what have they found out? Okay, well, damn, if Cade's the guy, if I put a bunch of some of these veterans that, or some of these young veterans that we thought we were going to be trading, Isaiah Stewart's and company, they actually fit. Oh, Jalen Duren, I don't know if I want to pay him. He actually fits. Okay, well now you mentioned tough guys. We have to add certain kind of veterans. There are niche veterans that we have to add. So if it's not Tobias Harris, it's Malik Beasley. Okay, Malik Beasley gets caught up in his shit. Okay, all right. I think in the second year it was Bojan Bogdanovic. They had Jeremy Grant. And now this year they got Fontecchio and they got Duncan Robinson. Like
Tim Hardaway for a year.
Yeah. Last year. So, but none of those guys conflict or get in the way of your guy or the player that you're building with. And now, if Jalen Duren is a building block, you'll continue to build through Cade and what works best with Jalen Duren going forward.
Yep.
But it took 2 to 3 really bad years for you to get to even what you got to last year.
And you got to give a lot of credit. Certainly, again, the difference between what I think what we say what Trajan has done with that team than compared to what was done by Troy Weaver before was that Weaver was in the talent acquisition business. You know what I'm saying? Weaver was acquiring talent and hoping. It's the same thing that the Sixers were in when they were tanking every year. They were in the talent acquisition business, and they were hoping that one of those talents would stick. That doesn't, if you don't have the plan. Trajan figured out the plan. Everybody knew Cade was the guy, but what were you going to put around him? Remember, there was all these questions about guys like Duren. Should they trade Duren? He's going to be an all-star this year, most likely in the East. You look the way he's playing now. So, they picked like when you build the team that's complementary, those are the best teams where the guys fit together. The reason the Lakers couldn't do all this stuff, every time they grabbed Carmelo and Russ and all this, you're just grabbing names. You're not grabbing a team. You're not putting together a team. And that's why Oklahoma City is so good. Those guys come in off the bench, and they may play 8 minutes one night, and they may play 20 the next. But every night, those guys give you this exact same level of production. And if they call on a Kenrich Williams once a week, you know what I'm saying? If they call on when Kenrich gets his 5 minutes that once a week, he's going to do what he's supposed to do in those 5 minutes. And the Pelicans have never had that commitment from 1 to 12.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are two, and I think the best part about those comparisons, those two teams that we talked about in Detroit and Oklahoma City, Grub, is that they're both small market teams, right? They're both teams they're both places where you have to build a culture and a consistency for players and coaches and bright emerging talents and minds and creators to want to come there, to want to be a part of that. But the only way you can do that, the only way you can't rush the process ultimately to do it. And the Pelicans have learned that even with generational talents, it's just simply not that easy. And now, for better for worse, Joe is paying the bill. He's paying the bill that previous guys left for him. Others may have put all this stuff, ordered all this food, and now he got to figure it out. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, he can't make the same mistakes and continue in ordering the same shit that they did. Right? At some point, bro, it's been 20 plus years of this. At some point, somebody has to look. They have to look forward and look at the things that are working. You can't use the examples of places that don't apply to you. You can't. You mentioned Minnesota. That's another team, right? That they figured out. They built those things. They brought in players that at their best, the best parts of those teams outside of like Rudy Gobert and DiVincenzo, like got there last year. But when we're talking about the best years of Cat, when we're talking about Anthony Edwards, when we're talking about McDaniels and company, like those all came up around the same time through that organization, through that pipeline, like homegrown type of instances, type of players that all grew up together. Orlando, yeah.
Like they're starting to figure it out too. And they added their pieces, but their main guys are their main guys. It's two guys they took, Paolo and Wagner.
Franz.
And everybody else fits around them. And you have to be committed to what they're doing. And if they're figuring out as with the offense, absolutely. But yeah, they made their commitment to what they were going to be. They're Paolo and Wagner's team. So they work inside out. But the outside guys got to be what they be. And that's the Pelicans. What are they? That's the thing. It's like, Orlando ain't going to win. But they got more. Like you're talking bad about Orlando. They were number one pick a couple years ago. And now they won tonight. They beat the Knicks tonight. So, I mean, it's like Orlando is like, there's folks in the chat. I just think it's, what do you want? Like, I'm like, do you think this is a 1-year thing that they can just turn it around with these guys? Every year people come in and say, well, the Pelicans are this talented. The Pelicans are so good. If they just did this, and then they get mad at people like us when I say, or you say, we say, you can't do it this way. Well, you don't have the answer. Nobody's paying me and you to have the answer, Chris. If somebody want to pay me, $2 million to make the decisions, I'll do the research. I'll find who the best GM candidate I think is out there. But I still have the right, I think, to say the Pelicans should have had a process to get their current GM, or the Pelicans should have done more with in evaluating their coach. Just because I don't know necessarily know who should the next coach of the Pelicans should be, doesn't mean that our opinion is invalid to say they've made some bad decisions.
And another team that we talked about earlier, Memphis from Ja to Bane to Jaren Jackson Jr. to and there's been other guys. Brandon Clark. Wow, he's had better years before injuries and stuff, but he's another guy even now to where they're leaning towards this next era with Coward and whomever. Like, they've done so much, they did so much out of one era through their young talent. Now, they ultimately missed their window towards being a contender and capitalizing on it properly and having an opportunity to win a championship or being a team that can maybe make a finals 100%. But the Pelicans can't argue with the Grizzlies about who's doing it better. You know what I'm saying? Like, who you think like, would you rather have what the Grizzlies have done than what the Pelicans have done at this point? Like, that's the thing. Like, you got to take steps. At least the Grizzlies, they've shown that they respect the process to at least attempt to do it right. It won't always end up in a championship, but when you're a small market team, and hell, even when you're not a small market team, sometimes that's just how you have to do it. When you don't have the luxury to be able to go out and have LeBron James to want to join your franchise and rebuild from there, you know what I'm saying? Like what are your other options? There are teams like Atlanta, for example. They haven't capitalized on it properly, but they're at least attempting to do a lot of this through homegrown and guys and players that fit around who they think their star is. Now that may shift.
They've been able to do it. They've been able to do it with their homegrown guys. They won 60 games with Jeff Teague and Al Horford, who they drafted, and those guys that they developed. They've had, you know what I'm saying? Like, the real goal for most teams in the NBA, not most, the teams that want to win, is at first you just got to be consistently good, right? And then, like we've talked about, whether it's the Portland for 20 years, whether it was Memphis for 20 years, Utah for 20 years, even in a Toronto, which, yes, okay, everybody go throw Brandon Ingram back at our faces and whatnot, but I'm not gonna lie and say we didn't think that Toronto had made a mistake, that they had the same guys all around. Be like, they have this, but those guys committed to it. They committed to it, and so that's why it's working for them, because all those guys, Scotty Barnes, He ain't taking too many shots, but he's facilitating for other folks. Brandon, you do what you do. Quickly, you do what you do. And those guys have accepted that. But I think that New Orleans, all of it is about clear definition of purpose, clear definition of roles, clear definition of identity, clear definition of actions. And when all these other teams, the teams that win, they decide what they're going to be, and they just be that. The Pelicans are like that dude who came from a new school, from a different school, and he shows up at school, and now he wants to dress cool. At his old school, he was something else, but now he wants to try to be cool and do all these things. Just got to be who you are, man. And that's why I put that Jay-Z quote out there today. You could change, but it's only the top layer. You were who you were when you got here. You know what I'm saying? Like the Pelicans keep trying to put something over a facade and get over on themselves, to get over on the fans, to get over on the league. And I think that's why, as a whole, the NBA is so indifferent about the Pelicans, because it just feels like the organization doesn't care. And the fans take strays for it, but you're taking the organization strays. That's whose strays you're taking. You're taking the organization strays because the league is looking at putting the blame on the fans for what the organization has done.
And look, guys. I mean, I know like some of y'all in here in a traditional recap. I mean, I love breaking down the game. Ain't nothing to break down when you 2-15 and you out here with the skeleton crew. And I don't even talk about us. I'm talking about the team, the Pelicans team, right? And they must talk about this game, man. I mean, this game is just another reminder of what this team needs to do going forward. And that's the conversation we're having right now. So y'all, I'm just, I want to make that clear. And I also want to say, Grub, like, sometimes those, that identity that you get doesn't always have to be drafted. You can trade for it, right? But you better establish that this is where we're going. This is what we're building. When Indiana traded for Halliburton wasn't drafted there. But what did they do? They started putting players around him that would fit, that would complement him ultimately. They identified who was there already. They complimented him.
Mm-hmm.
They identified that Miles Turner fit already. I don't need to move him. You know what I mean? You have a Neesmith who compliments him. You draft a Nembhard, compliments him. You bring in an Obi Toppin, like you bring in all of these pieces that complement. We don't have to, we can be fine with TJ McConnell because he's gonna spell Tyrese, and he's gonna help us in while he's off the floor and do things that maybe Tyrese isn't able to do for a period of time. Like you compare and contrast all over the place. That's building a team. That's making a gumbo. And I think, again, man, I mean, this isn't to be a funeral or to make a funeral on the franchise, but this is the truth about this franchise. They have not in its 20 years identified when they were supposed to, the players and the people that they were building around and committed to it. You name the player, you name the situation, you name the superstar that they've had, they've always found reasons. They've always found reasons to kind of skip the process. There's not one. When AD was here, they quickly decided, okay, we're going to bring in others that complicated who exactly this team and the identity of this team goes for, because they didn't want to put everything on AD's shoulders. When Zion got drafted, David Griffin was on press conferences before the season talking about Drew Holiday being an MVP candidate, being an MVP kind of player. They did not want to put everything on Zion's shoulders, so they cluttered everything around him. You can't protect and shelter superstar talents, Grub. You know what I mean? Again,
not number one picks.
No,
not number one picks.
Because what's the point? What's the point? You have to build around these dudes and deal with some of the bad seasons, the bad years, the flaws that come with it, the ugly parts. But you got to invest in what they need around them, even if you're wrong. Even if you looking at Jeremiah Fears today, and I think he's way more closer to Tony Parker than he is to any type of facilitator. But that's okay. That's not a problem at his peak. If he's Tony Parker, great Hall of Fame guy. If that's
Tony
what he
Parker
is,
going to the Hall of Fame,
But if that's what you're gonna do, if he's gonna be that guy, if you think he's a scorer, accept that and think about what's going to best fit around those kind of players. Derek Queen, you got an early idea. You should have known when you drafted him. You know, if you watch the film, you talk to a couple people, but you could have seen early.
I gotta give y'all credit again because I was okay with Derek. I was okay. Y'all were on it. I was okay with the pick. Y'all were championing the pick, so I gotta give y'all that credit.
But you see what you have though. So now you don't have to further complicate and put pieces. You got to figure out who can't fit around that's here and who you need to bring in, or what type of pieces and parts you need to bring in to fit that. You got to go all in with these two people. You have to. The process has already started to build around you, grub. Like like even if you don't want to accept it, the process, Jeremiah Fears ain't going nowhere now. I'm averaging 15 points in my first 17 games at 19 years old, barely knowing what I'm doing. I'm not going nowhere. Derek Queen, youngest big to average have a 20-point 10 assist game. I am not going anywhere. This is who I am. You got to build around it and get the players that don't fit around that out of here.
If Derek Queen is baby Joker, then again, look at the Denver example too. Jokic was a second-round pick. Jamal Murray was a middle first-round pick, taken behind Buddy Hield. Michael Porter Jr. was the highest guy drafted in that group. But they built a team around, like it was once they figured out that this is our duo, Jokic and Murray, then everything was about, again, we're going to need a shooter.
ACP.
They get in PJ. They needed a point guard at Monty Morris. They were finding complementary pieces. Bruce Brown, who, played for the Pelicans last year and is back in Denver. Those were all guys to do and play off of Jokic and Murray.
Yep.
And if Fears, and I think you would say Fears' game resembles Jamal Murray's, maybe not the outside shooting, but as a guy who's not a point guard, but is at 6'3", 6'4", and can move off ball and can get to the bucket, then if Fears is that kind of guy, and if you have a baby Joker, then build that up. And I think that, you can get some progress with Borrego. I don't, and when people talk about the coaching part, I just will say this part is you're not getting get the idea of a multi-million-dollar coach out of your head. That's not happening. You're either going to get Borrego, like either he's coming back next year and they're going to rehire him no matter what happens, or they're going to hire another young coach that they think is an up-and-comer, because you don't go out and spend for a big coach when you're still probably going to lose. And so I think that, could Borrego help and create an offensive identity? Absolutely. He could. But that depends on what his relationship ultimately becomes with those two young players. And that's the hard part again. Because if you're putting Borrego, he needs to be, if I'm James Borrego, I'm getting a real good relationship with Fears and Queen. I may like Zion, I may like Trey, I may like Herb, but if you want to stay in your James Borrego, you want to keep this job, then you got to start tailoring those things to those two guys.
And,
because they're the future.
KB, I respect this comment, right? Everything y'all talk about had a system. We play LA Fitness basketball. Well, look, it takes the identity starts with the players, and then you build a system around those players. Now, some teams and some coaches can say we're going to play this way no matter who's on the floor. But guess what? When they're putting together their game plans, when they're planning out their season, they're planning and starting with it's starting with players. It's starting with these particular guys. Miami does a really good job of subbing in and playing without. But you don't think that when the season started, like their system is built around Bam and Hero and whoever, and everyone else is supposed to play around? Like it's the same thing. Surely, yes, this team plays LA Fitness basketball, but they also don't have an identity in regards to how it's happening. Like, in Denver, it's a lot easier to build a system when Nikola Jokic is who everything is revolving through, and you have Jamal Murray as your second option. Yeah, that creates a system in itself. Like, Tex Winters brings the damn triangle to Phil Jackson in Chicago. Well, guess what? It's a lot easier to play the triangle when you got Michael Jordan and you got Pippen and you got Ryan Harper and company and you got Luke Longley or whoever the big is. But it starts with who's ever there. If he'd have been running the damn triangle through Clyde Drexler, it'd look different. No disrespect to Clyde Drexler, Hall of Fame, but I'm just saying, like, it also matters who you are building this shit around. You got great players more times often than not help make these systems, but you have to. The Pelicans had, how many years did we go through growing up? We were talking about whose team is it, Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson?
Organization couldn't decide.
How can you build a system? How can you build a system when you don't even know who's the number one guy in your organization that everything's being built around? How can you build a system when you're trying to build? David Griffin said it himself that they were in one way or another trying to build two different teams. How can you build a system there?
You look at all these duos, you look at all the historic duos, one was the one who set up the other one. Every duo you talk about, whether it's Pippen and Jordan, Pippen was the passer, Jordan is the scorer, right? Malone and Stockton. Malone is the scorer, Stockton is the passer. Magic and Kareem. Magic is the passer, Kareem is the, you know what I'm saying? Like those two players have to complement each other. B.I. and Zion never complimented each other because one was not the server and one was not the, they both felt like I'm the centerpiece. You can't have two centerpieces. They ain't but one, think in the middle of a wheel. They ain't but one spoke. Let me think in the middle. Everybody else is a spoke. One is the hub. So you have to decide. There's always a hierarchy. You know what I'm saying? There's always a hierarchy. Somebody has to. Steph is number one. Clay is number two. Clay knew he was everything Clay got was off of Steph's table. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just how it works. And the Pelicans they didn't do it with AD. They were still. Think about this. The year that when Boogie got hurt and everything, Boogie was in front.
Yeah,
Boogie was in front, and everybody in the building was really starting to talk about, are we going to build around Boogie?
Yeah.
So I mean, like you had drafted this guy number one, and he was in the background on his own team again. That locker room belonged to DeMarcus Cousins and Rajon Rondo. It didn't belong to Anthony Davis. Yep. That locker room does not belong to Zion Williamson. Yep. And if your best player doesn't own the locker room, you never go do it. You never go do it. Your best player has to own the locker room.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, we'll see what happens with this team going forward here, man. I mean, this isn't a traditional recap, but y'all, if you don't get an hour of me talking about this 2-15 team, we won't have to talk about something, man. So it was good to have OG Grub in here, man, to kind of chop with us here, man. So we're gonna go through some of these star comments and get y'all out of here. The Pelicans play next on Monday against Chicago in the city. Bulls, I think, won tonight. Against Washington. We'll see how that goes. Zion will probably be back. Herb will probably be back, and we'll get word on some point shortly, probably around Sunday or entering Monday, about how far Jordan Poole is back from a return. All right. Michael Morgan, appreciate you as always, man. $2. The whole coaching staff is a joke. Grub, this question is for you here from Showtime 504. Grub, would you blow up this team if you were calling the shots?
I mean, like I said, you can't reform this. It's built on a bad foundation. And I think it's not an indictment of the individuals. You just built a bad roster. And I think I would blow it up. I would build around these young guys because I think you have to give them the freedom to fail. And that is not going to happen as long as you have the older veterans around because they need their shots and opportunities too. So I think, I would blow it up. And that does not mean that you stuck for the next 5 years in failure. You've had failure now, and you have not rebuilt. You've had failure for 20 years. You got 2 playoff series wins. So I think, and as we've said, they've never committed to a full rebuild. So let's do it.
Yeah. Full time. Fence fan here with the 5-piece. Appreciate you as always, dog. Appreciate you guys pulling up tonight. Salute to you, Grub. Well, salute to you and Grub. This team stinks. They surely do. They absolutely do. But somebody got to talk about them. Be Supreme. I apologize to my wife and kids tonight for bringing them into this fandom. I got to stop watching the Pels around them. It's not healthy. Yeah. Yeah. What can I say? What can I say? Two-time Gemini. So I love this question. So who helps Fears and Queen develop their game? Now, this is probably a longer conversation, but I love these conversations because Grubb is one of my favorite people to talk to talk these conversations with, or these type of topics because of the history of the game. So, all right, walk me through here. Walk me through this here. I believe, Grubb, that we talked about most of this saying complimenting, like things that help complement what they do well. And what they don't do well helps develop their game because they're going to mature on their own. For better, for worse, they're going to mature on their own. They're going to get bigger. They're going to get stronger. They're going to add more skills. They're going to do all of those different things. You help best develop them by bringing it. Now you could bring in players that you could go to. OKC brings in Chris Paul to start with SGA, but it's only for a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's only for a year. I'm bringing you here to teach you some things. You know what I mean? If I'm DeAndre Jordan and I'm Kevon Looney, I'm teaching Queen some things right now. But I'm not here for the long. Kevon Looney ain't here for the long run. I'm here to help you. Jeremiah Fears, if you bring in a guard, call up Alfred. Or call up a similar guard, a similar guard that can relate to Fears in some way or some form in regards to his style, his way of playing, that he can run game with and say, okay, you can actually help teach me things because you've been here before, specifically close to my situation. So I think like that's how you do it. And look, like let's go 90s Magic. The team that got the team that Shaq and then Penny were drafted to wasn't the same exact team that ended up helping them get to the finals necessarily. They eventually, like, once they realized that those two guys they knew about Shaq, but once they realized immediately that Penny was the guy, like, okay, we got to get, like, what do they need? Shooting. Dennis Scott, Nick Anderson, y'all up. And they continue to build.
Dennis was there first. Dennis is first. Mm-hmm. Dennis was there first.
I appreciate
Dennis
it.
and Nick were the first two. Yes.
But they complimented.
Shaq arrives, obviously, and then Penny. But right. It was once you got Shaq, then you knew you had you had the pieces. You had your point guard with Penny. And Nick was your strong two. You know what I'm saying? The guy who handled the physical jobs in the backcourt, guarded the other team's best player. That was Nick's job. Dennis is your shooter. Absolutely. Then you get Shaq. That's your center. They didn't have a four. They go get Horace Grant. What could Horace do? He knocked down a 15-footer and he could defend in the post. So everything was building. Like you said, they took their young pieces and they brought in the vets around them on the backside. And who did they start with Shaq initially? Scott Skiles. You put a veteran point guard who knew his one job every night was feed Shaq. Yes, I love Bo Outlaw. I know yes, we love Bo, but he was not a starter. Bo was a guy to do things off the bench. Yeah. So yeah, they let their young guys, because each year Nick and Dennis and Shaq, they didn't make the playoffs. Orlando did not make the playoffs the first year. Bron didn't make the playoffs his first year in Cleveland. Steph did not make his first playoffs the first year in Golden State. And what happened? You take all these. When you look at Golden State, Steph gets there, they talk about his ankles. Clay gets there, he's on the bench. Draymond gets there, he's fat. He came in the second round. Nobody's worried about Draymond. But those dudes grew up together. Mm-hmm. And what did they? Then they brought in the older guys. Then you bring in the Iguodala's. Then you bring in the Andrew Bogut's. Then you bring in those guys to fill out the roster. And no, you don't have. That's the whole point, Meech, is that no, you don't have that guy, but you could have it in these two kids. You could have it, and you owe them the opportunity to find out what you've got. And you can't find out if you're trying to see if Zion is still your number one, if you're trying to see if Trey can be your number one. You can't have four number ones. You can't tell everybody you're going to sing lead tonight.
The perfect thing to add to that, Grubb, is in regards to Golden State. And I didn't see the comment is, well, yeah, you don't know if you had those guys, but you have to fully commit to them to find out. You don't get to see the stuff that you eventually see right away as long as you got Monte Ellis sharing the backcourt with them. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like you have to move Monte Ellis to bring in an Andrew Bogut And here you go. You have to identify if we rolling with this, even if we're wrong, and we could be wrong, certain guys, even if they're a part of past low, Monte was a part of the We Believe team. I'm sure there were fans that didn't like that. We mortgaging our future in a kid that's been in 3-4 years and can't stay on the floor. Like this Braille, like that's what we doing? Like that. But it ultimately worked. The only way you can do it is by once again figuring out what fits and what you currently have that doesn't, shipping that out and bringing in the right parts that fit. I mean, and the thing is, Grub, basketball history, it's one of the more respectable, like nothing respect to me. There's not many sports that respect their history in regards to how this shit is done and won like basketball. It's just not many. You can go decade after decade, year after year, so many different teams to where you can find examples of this certain things working or things having to go this way for it to ultimately work, or just team building in general.
You can't show me a recent team. The only team you go back to, the only teams that you can go back to and say they're manufactured, you know what I'm saying, is what you would say with the Miami Heat, or you would say that Celtics team. But those were all veterans at that point. But if we talk about all these other ones, it's a constant revolving of young players within the team and then grabbing the finishing piece when you're close. You go get that other piece. And it's rarely a big name. It's usually another vet to finish it out. But yeah, it's pretty consistent. You start with the draft. You have to draft your guy or identify that guy early on, like as we talked about with an SGA or Tyrese Halliburton, when they are on that first deal and you identify on somebody else's team, that's the guy we really want. And you pay the price. Or you find a dummy, like Sacramento was a dummy for what they gave up for Tyrese. You know, I mean, it worked for them to get Sabonis, but they could have got more, but they didn't get enough. But hey, you know, it worked out. I guess they're happy for it. But yeah, but for the most part,
look at Boston.
If you've it's the same thing with Jokic. They had Jokic and they had Nurkic, and they said which one we got to pick. They had to pick one, and they made the right choice. They could have made the wrong choice, but they committed to what they were in, because nobody, when they picked Jokic, would have thought that he would be what he is now. Yep. But you knew he was a good ball player, and they decided this is what we're building around. So yeah, the Pelicans, it's just as simple as making the commitment, and you'll find out. And I think everybody would be happier. I think that's the thing that divides the fan base more than anything else, is because the way that they build a team lends you to only like pieces within it. So everybody gets on their piece and says, I'm a Poole person, I'm a Trey person, I'm a Zion person, I'm a Fears person, I'm a Queen person. And so now you're only thinking about building the team from that individual's perspective. And when you do that, that's why the fan base is the way it is. I want this guy, I want this guy, I want this guy. And you really want the Pelicans to be good. That's what you want. You want the Pelicans to be good. And whoever those players are, ultimately, that mix comes in, then just give me that. I don't care whose names are on the back of the jerseys. Just give me 12 players who are going to win.
Same thing when you traded Anthony Davis. It was Brandon. It was Brandon guys. It was Lonzo guys. It was Zion guys. Like, Drew's the veteran, but still one of the better players on the team. It gets too complicated for, once again, as you just mentioned, a sport that's laws and rules don't change that much. Boston, recently, over the past decade of sorts, or close to it at this point, with the Tatum and Jaylen Brown experience. Think about how many times they had to reset that. Think about the failures that they have to go through that period. You go through Kyrie, and then after Kyrie, you're swapping out veterans consistently to figure out who's going to work and who's not.
Thomas.
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas, right? Like, you're swapping around, but they know they're living and dying. And through this period, Grub, so many people, I was one of them, that thought you got to break Tatum and Brown up. They stuck with it. So many people told them that they're wasting their time trying to make these two fit. So too. Yeah, so many people, and then they finally find the right, the right mixture, and then boom, you look at them differently. than you would have before. They find the right mixture of guys that complement their players. Derek
And
White's,
they
the Drew
decided.
Holiday's, Al Horford's. They decided. They stuck with it, even against people saying, "Nah, that's not really it." And look, if the Pelicans were in previous eras are able to do that now, you can be having a different. It's not going to always work. It's not going to always be agreed upon. But the first thing people need to know, it takes time. It takes time.
But it's faster than you think, though, if you do it right. Because it didn't take Minnesota long. It didn't take Memphis long. It didn't take Denver long. If you just make that commitment, and if it fails, it fails. But you've had failure. Like, let's not parse failure and say like I don't want to fail again. But you've been failing. Like, what are you losing if you do it that way? If you go to the full rebuild, how would that be different than the failure that you've had already with this team? Let's try something different.
Grub, you said, I believe this was to you. You said both rookies need the ball. How does that work down the road as the vets leave the team?
Well, I think they need it in different ways. Like, you see it with Queen, you need him to have the ball because he's going to make decisions with the basketball. For Fears, he needs to have the basketball because he is a quick twitch athlete. He needs to get downhill, and the only way he can do that is with the ball in his hands. So I think that they can be complementary because you just involve them in two-man actions more. And I think that's what you'll see down the road is Fears setting, is Queen setting up Fears so that Queen comes up and sets the screen, Fears comes off, rolls. I mean, yeah, it's not a hard thing to do. It's just every team's going to have multiple guys who need the basketball in their hands. That's fine. It's just if you have 5 guys who all need 15 shots, and that's the problem. You're not going to get everybody their 15 shots every night. And that's the problem. Because as we just talked about at the beginning, if you weren't here, like Trey is not getting the right number of shots because the ball can't move with this group. And I think that, Zion, even when he came back for those 2 games, how many shots was Zion getting? It was like he didn't take a bunch of shots
He got
against
9.
Dallas.
He got like 9 last game. Yeah, he got like 9. Yeah.
Because they cannot run it this way. You cannot make this work because everybody is there is no true point guard. Queen is the closest thing you have to a point guard on this whole team. He's the closest thing you have to a point guard. Nobody else. And you putting Trey in these positions where he's got to break people down off the dribble all night. That's not his game. That's not Trey's game. He's not supposed to be doing that. But that's where you forced this to be. That's why you had Herb playing point guard for the first week of the season. Like, none of that makes any sense. This it just does not fit together. And let's try to think about who fits with Queen and Fears. And that should be the question going forward. Who fits? And you see how Peavy fits. You see how he fits.
Yep.
He fits as a 3 in that group. But to me, it seems like whoever you pair with Fears in the backcourt, they need to be a more pass-first point guard. That person needs to be somebody who doesn't take a lot of shots. That person needs to be somebody who can drive and pass and get it to Fears so that you can shift the defense and allow him to drive and take the responsibility of running the offense out of his hands because it does not serve him right now. He wants to score, and you are slowing him up, I think, mentally by asking him to run the offense.
Oh, you can go the route. I mean, you were talking about Denver earlier. You can go the route that Denver went by adding, before it was KCP, right?
And
it was Monty for a period.
KCP and Monty
and then once KCP was gone, it's now Christian Braun, right? And then when Christian Braun's not playing, it's Peyton Watson. Like they're putting people around him or next to him that don't get in his way. They won't take away his shots and they won't step on his toes, but also do things that he is either not willing or not capable of doing. Peyton can't shoot. Well, against New Orleans he can. Peyton can't shoot, but he's an athlete. He's long, he's rangy, and he can defend his ass off. And he gives you great energy. Does all the small things. KCP could shoot, play a little defense. You knew exactly what to expect from him every single night. Christian Braun, little bit of everything. But you ain't got to worry about him clapping for the basketball. Michael Peavy. Not saying Michael Peavy's Christian Braun, but he's the perfect kind of guy. If you identify that this doesn't have to be Jokic Murray. It could be whoever. But if you say it's Queen Fears, PV fits that perfectly. So I don't necessarily. I didn't pick this because of the question. I don't believe that you get a top 3 pick. But do you believe in the report that you can get possibly, let's just say, multiple first round picks? I think the report was 3 first round picks. But do you think you can get multiple first round picks for Trey Murphy?
They're gonna be conditions on them. And it depends on who the team is. But yeah, I think you can get multiple picks for Trey. I think teams look at Trey. I don't think anybody around the league is down on Trey. They're down on the Pelicans, and they all look at Trey as somebody who's being used improperly. And everybody thinks that if they get Trey, they can make him a 20 points. He's already a 20-point scorer, knowing that every night the other team is sending 3 guys at him on occasion. So yeah, if he's, you imagine it, like the teams that won him, Golden State. Trey on Golden State right now with Butler and Curry. Trey in San Antonio with Castle and Wemby. Those are the teams that they keep talking about him being with. Or Trey in Chicago with Giddey up there in Chicago. Like those are the places they always talk about. Any of those teams, Trey's getting points.
Yeah, I was kind of, trying to take the slow path in regards to building around Queen and Fears, but I look, man. We're almost in December, man. We're almost in December, and the closer we get, to December, we get to a new year. The closer we get to a new year, you're talking about year 8 for Zion. You're talking about year 5 for Herb and Trey. I think
6.
Year 6. Year 6.
Next year is year 6.
Some of this stuff is just staring at you in the face, and in all honesty, and what you need to be doing. And I think games like this for someone like me makes it completely clear. It just makes it completely clear because it keeps, like, I'm a big I observe the reality of the shit. If something keeps happening to me and it keeps presenting itself, it's not by accident. And to me, it's not by accident that you just keep finding these games where it's just all about Jeremiah Fears and what Derek Queen, what those two are going to do. It's not by accident. It's not by accident that I'm watching Trey Murphy being cast as something that, like you're saying, is something that either A, he is not built to do yet or ever, or has to almost carry by himself. And when I say carry by himself, I'm talking about the shooting element. He's the only shooter right now on the team. It's unfortunate, but it's just him. He has to be lights out money. He can't go 1 for 7 like he did against Dallas from 3, because they can't survive it or sustain it without a miracle performance, because the numbers tell you, and the statistics, even with Herb, when Herb was shooting at 42%, he's not going to do that every night, and he can't be your second best shooter. Even if he was, even if he was shooting 40, he cannot be your second best shooter. You don't have a specialist. You don't have, so it's completely on
not
Trey.
Hawkins.
It's not Hawkins, who was drafted to do such thing. So it's all on Trey to have to do all these different. Okay, and now Zion's out, right? Poole's out, so now I got to create. But I also have to make 4 or 5 threes. He ain't built to do that, and really, not many players in this world, in this league are, to be honest. And that's not giving them bail, but it's the truth, to be honest. So it's becoming more and more evident, how they need to move.
Because this thing that people talk about with Trey isn't what we thought it was. I don't think people understand. Like they say, well, Trey needs to move it. He can't leave the ball. Like he has to stay there as an outlet whenever he's on the floor. Because if Queen gets bottled up, who are you throwing it to? Like Trey's got to be there because he's the hand grenade launcher when it gets down to those last few seconds when it's on the court. And you see how many times they get down into late into the shot clock. He's got to be there. And that's the part that messes it up. He can't go run and be trying to cut because who's setting the screens? There's nobody setting screens. And B, if he's moving, where is he going to go? Like if he's running around, who's going to find him? Who? It's not going to be Fears. It's not going to be Herb. It's not going to be who on the court can find him if he's running around. Yeah. And you say, somebody say Ray Allen Page or Rip Hamilton. I saw Rip Hamilton play in Washington before he got to Detroit. Rip wasn't getting them shots like that. Rip wasn't getting shots like that. Like, if you put you can put anybody in the wrong situation and they're not going to get the numbers they're supposed to get. And I'm like, if Trey's shooting fewer shots than he shot last year, but more threes, what does that tell you? If he's having higher turnovers, but his rebound numbers are up, it's because he's having to dribble more and more. The defense is waiting for him. When he gets the ball, he's not dribbling off of movement. He's dribbling because the team knows he's the primary option. And every night he's the primary option. Yep. This is not who he was supposed to be. Trey's dad will tell you. Trey is an exciting player. Trey is a good player, but he even thinks Trey is a guy who's a 1A or a 1B, not a number one by himself. So yeah, I don't think it's over. Nobody has ever said Trey was going to be the number one player. I didn't say it. I don't think I heard anybody on our network say that Trey was the number one player. But I think he's talented enough in this NBA to be an all-star. And I think that it's the way this team has been utilized. Rip averaged 20, but he wasn't. Trey's averaging 21 right now. Like, this is the thing, y'all do these with arguments, and this is the part that bothers me, is y'all are not arguing for the betterment of a team. You're making cases on individual players. And we say, well, B.I. was getting double to triple team. The problem with B.I. was not that he was getting double to triple team. It was that B.I. was dribbling the ball out of the clock and not taking enough threes. He's playing a different kind of basketball in Toronto. That's not the same B.I. that you saw the last 3 years. And y'all do this because your agenda is about the guy. What do you watch? Watch the basketball. Stop thinking about the guy. Yes, we work too hard to get it back. That's a team thing. That's not on one guy. That's when you talk about the team construction isn't right. When you talk about the offensive philosophy wasn't suited and Willie wasn't adjusting and things. It's a systemic problem. Everybody's to blame. It's not one guy. It's a systemic problem. You're not going off what I said. You've been making disingenuous comments the whole time, Coach Willie Green. So let's cut the bullshit.
Fist of the Black Star. Y'all don't count Sadiq as a shooter. I think he's capable of shooting. I think he can have good shooting nights. When I think of shooter, like I think of someone who fits in that, that's more pure, that's more part of what you count on them for. I look at Sadiq as more of a bucket and more of a scorer than I do of necessarily a shooter. And even if and let's say, because I think for his career, he shoots like 34-35%, somewhere in that range. I think he can have some nights, but let's say I did say he was a shooter. He can't be the third best shooter on your team. He can't be the second or the fourth best shooter on your team necessarily. I don't think he can. And I don't think in Sadiq's mind, that's what he wants. Sadiq likes to do multiple things with the basketball. He likes to post. He likes to drive. He likes to score in transition if he can. He likes to do a lot. He don't want to sit in the corner. That's not what he was. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't
like Sadiq's never gonna be a volume shooter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just not him. And that's okay. Now he's having a bad shooting year to start. Yeah. I mean, he's not gonna finish the year 31%. That's not who he is. But I wouldn't consider him a shooter. I think he's more than that. But unfortunately, Candid, he's easily the second best active shooter on the team. It's hard for me. When Poole gets back, he's third. And that doesn't make it any better. That doesn't make it any better, man. So, so that's all I got, man. I am going to.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty much it, guys. Man, that's enough talking about this team. I'm gonna get y'all out of here, man. It's been an hour and 40 minutes. Appreciate Grub as always, man, for pulling up, man. Y'all check out the post up, Grub. Let them know now, as you're out in the beautiful Great Lakes out in Michigan, what days they can find the post up, where they can follow you at.
Wednesdays at 6:00. We've been doing it live, and I appreciate it. Like the folks checking in have been great. The feedback has been great. So yeah, 6:00 on Wednesday. Unless there's a Wednesday night game, then we'll do it till Tuesdays. But yeah, the post up, man. Y'all, I appreciate y'all checking it out. And Chris, man, I haven't checked out the morning show with y'all, man. Y'all doing some great things up there with y'all doing them little, extra pieces. So I
Trying.
hope we get to do some more together. Now that I'm getting a little more settled up here in the Great White North. But yeah, it's good to be back.
Oh man, we'll have to figure out a time to get you on the morning show, because man, oh boy, I'd be stressed in with some of these topics, man. I can only keep up so much, a little bit. Eventually we're gonna get to a part we're gonna be talking about college baseball, and I forgot the super chat here, man. Gotta show love. Hey, it's Liam 8049. Appreciate the 5-piece. Do you think we hit on these draft picks? Also, shout out to the best New Orleans legend, CP3. I do. What you think they will be, different. Where you think their ceilings are, different. But did you succeed on drafting successful players that can be a part of your program in your future and build something? Yes. I think.
Yeah, and shout out to CP3, like I said, announced his retirement today, that he's going to retire at the end of the season. It's a tough day for me as a Wake Forest person because, Chris saying he's going to retire, and then we lost a legend who also played for the New Orleans Hornets for a hot minute, my man Rodney Rogers, who I remember meeting Rodney. I was a senior in high school. I went to go visit Wake Forest. He walked across, I was standing with somebody. He walked across the quad. And at that time in my life, I was 17 years old. The only person I had met that was more physically imposing than Rodney Rogers was Shaq. Like Rodney was Zion. Like when you talk about guys like that, Rodney was in that the next Charles Barkley thing. That 6'6", 6'7". There's a dunk. And if you've seen the Zion, everybody knows the Zion 360 windmill. There's a Rodney Rogers 360 that he did against Duke, and it's on YouTube. You go look at that and tell me if that don't look like the precursor to Zion Williamson, and watch what he did. Guy won 6th Man of the Year, played inside and out, shot threes. Yeah, he was something, man. And the tragedy of him breaking his neck and then being in a paraplegic for the last 2 decades. It was great to have him for all these years, but it was just, for a guy so strong to be in that position, it's a tough thing. It was a tough thing to see, but yeah, Rodney was a great dude.
Rest in peace to Rodney Rogers, man. I remember seeing him live during some of the earlier the original New Orleans Hornets days, man. So rest in peace and shout out to his family, man. That's it for us. This I'm never good. I tell y'all like, hey man, this show ain't gonna be long, and then hour 40 minutes talking about
we love
Boston
basketball,
Celtics,
man.
but love basketball. All right, man. Well, y'all know to find us tomorrow. I'm not post game, but Sunday show as always. Grub told you guys where to find them, and y'all can find us post game every single New Orleans Pelicans game for recaps as always with the full crew. Shout out to Lala. Shout out to everybody help making this happen. Shout out to Grub for pulling up, man. So I will see y'all tomorrow.
Shout out to the 100K. The 100K.
Hey, 100,000, 100,000 followers on Instagram. That is difficult, man. That is it's hard to get 1,000 followers on Instagram. You gotta really care. You gotta really want that shit to really 100,000. Oh man, if you are a follower on Instagram, even if you are at this point, listen. Shout out to Boo Crew, man, for everything that it's been doing. Providing this show, providing this platform, and it's still so young. It's still in its infancy in a lot of ways, man. So it's provided opportunities here for us, and so many others. And can't thank the people enough from Lala to Justin to Ross and everybody that I've come across in this process. But y'all, man, y'all supporting, watching every show, leaving every comment, good or bad. Y'all giving positive, negative criticism. You know what I mean? Liking, sharing the shows. Like, that's really what it's about. The super chats, y'all keeping the lights on. You know what I mean? Like, we really, really, really appreciate it, man. So y'all keep doing it. And hey, man, hopefully I'm allowed to see 200,000. You know what I mean? You know, so I'm appreciate everything that you know, the network is doing, and you guys for continuing to pull it up. But I'm getting out of here. Grub getting out of here. Thank y'all. See y'all tomorrow. All right.